I forget what we were talking about exactly. I feel like we just went like a huge rant and rabbit hole. But digressing, another rant and rabbit hole we're gonna get on. Maybe even Rob might jump on this rant. I feel like WBC has come out, man, and I love. Hey, like I said, I fucking hate WBC and sanctioning bodies, but I love pettiness. I will always keep that 100. WBC on Dillian Whyte, his team have turned this into a circus and have been stalling. Robert, do you have an answer to this claim against your fighter?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Mauricio is sick and tired of Dillian Whyte rounding up the troops with hashtag We Be Crooks. The WBC is a joke. This he said like we've had the fans tagging us in social media, telling us we're this, we're that. You know, this is personal to me. You know, sort of dragging my father's name and stuff like it. He went all in and saying that. But the whole stalling thing is because Eddie and Dillian, they want Dillian Whyte Rivas to be the eliminator and for it to be next, like the mandatory to be next. And Eddie's quietly confident. I'm not sure how it would work, but that there's kind of like a legal issue somewhere in this. I don't know quite how that would, where that is, but
hey, look, in the time and day on this same show, we talked about how a fighter who the court has ruled he did take banned substances, but the battle agreement said, well, you shouldn't take them, and that's enough wiggle room. So he shouldn't. He should be paid his purse. I think the WBC might wiggle out any legal action Eddie Hearn, Dillian Whyte have against them.
Well, anyway, that is where the WBC is saying they're stalling because we've made like an offer of like I think the interim title. Although Eddie done an interview today and said they're virtually there where they want it to be. That Dillian Whyte will be the mandatory. That is for the interim title. So he's unifying the silver and the interim WBC title.
Mandatory again.
Next on the list is I think the pearl belt. But sorry. But yeah, I think that's where it is. But Eddie seemed kind of confident today that Dillian Whyte, if he beats Rivas, will become Deontay Wilder's mandatory. Now, I think as far as will they just accept that? Because that could be a long time before that's called. But I don't know. I think if you feel like you're hard done by, I think they said this week will be 600 days that Dillian Whyte has been the WBC #1 contender. But if you're trying to get that mandatory, you wanting that shot at the chat, I don't know how helpful it is. Every other tweet or every other Instagram message that you're, coming at the governing body that you're trying to get that from, if you know what I mean.
Quickly,
you're not having it just yet.
Johnny, obviously a Wilder fan. Love you, Johnny, always. Day oneer, of course. I disagree with you, obviously, heavily in what you're about to say, or did say. Whyte was given an opportunity not to play politics, and he chose to. He rather fought Chisora again than Ortiz. And this is where I have this distinct issue here. Wilder gave him an opportunity for a voluntary shot. He ain't want it. First off, when you mean Wilder gave him the voluntary shot, he obviously threw the Ortiz fight. And I got to say, if a fighter is able to dictate, or a promoter is able to dictate which fights are called to be mandatories, which fights are called to be eliminators and such, then obviously that sanctioning body and governing body has little to no power. And that's an issue. So, yes, while I think you are factually right in the reality of the world that, yeah, Wilder gave him this and the WBC relented. But that is an issue. That is not something to applaud, Johnny. That is an innate issue in this system, that sanctioning bodies are not concrete in their resolutions. And for of course a litany of other issues, transparency, other stuff, but the fact that they have zero consistency in their ruling, and that's in large part due to promoter and fighter influence, that's an issue. When PBC has their head of operations on the Supreme Council, the WBC, that's an issue. And I think that is probably a bigger topic of conversation, or at least a bigger point than, well, White wanted to play politics. Like, well, the politics you're talking about here aren't ones to be applauded. And the same politics that White wants to play, you don't think the WBC is playing with having a PBC executive official on their board? Like, both sides are playing politics here, Johnny. Don't get ever twisted.
I mean, people saying, "Oh, he turned down the Ortiz final eliminator," but that was to be the second mandatory. He would still be no further forward. It was still someone else's would be mandatory, and then Dillian Whyte would be mandatory. Also, people say he didn't. Brazil and Dillian Whyte were called as a final eliminator. Suddenly, Fury signs for ESPN, and Brazil said he walked away from the Dillian Whyte fight for the Wilder fight, which is, whatever. It's a bigger money fight or whatever, or maybe it would have been a UK pay-per-view, whatever. But Dillian Whyte is this isn't kind of Dillian Whyte's fault. He had a little eliminator negotiating it, and then Fury went and signed for ESPN and walked away, and Brazil stepped in instead. I don't know. I just, whatever is the situation, Dillian Whyte deserves a shot at a fucking world title. That's all I know.
I'll put it this way to sort of clarify my point. To blame fighters in this situation, I think, is just missing the entire point. I'm not talking to you. I'm just talking generally, maybe me to Johnny. The sanctioning bodies and the systemic issue we are talking about here, the lack of consistency in ruling, is the primary topic of conversation, or at least it should be. That should be the thing we're blaming. The system, the institutional issues that play into, Johnny, what you're talking about, the politics and the air quotes corruption of the WBC and just sanctioning bodies as a whole. And I think we should always frame the conversation as blaming the systemic issue, the institutional issues that either are making bad fights, not making great fights, whatever it may be. Because, again, that is the primary cause of why we aren't getting those great fights or are just getting shit fights or whatever it may be. It's not because of these fighters. It's because of WBC relenting to promoters' whims, WBA relenting to promoters' whims, WBO, etc., etc. And that's a much bigger issue than White either wanting to play politics or not wanting to play politics.
And it's always at their benefit, though. Like, the WBC relents because the fight that wants to get made is more money, or
it still makes some money.
More, So the sanctioning bodies are shit. And like Rob said, White deserves better, especially out of the WBC. I think you can make a case that he had a really good shot to be Joshua's next opponent, turned it down because of money, because he thought he was going to take this other route. That part, if someone wants to make mention, he's had some opportunities that he turned down. But at the same time, fucking the WBC should just, if you're going to put, why have a mandatory status? Why have a number one contender? If it's just bought by a promoter and it's never enforced unless the promoter somehow is, it's two people in their stable or two people that they can get the most money out of, that shit's just, it's annoying. It really hurts the sport. Whereas Dana doesn't pay his fighters, but at least you get 1 and 2 fighting each other a lot of the times. You get the top level guys fighting each other consistently, So we just need to rectify that, whatever it takes.
Quickly, what was I going to respond to? Nah, fuck it. Never mind. It's just not worth it. It's not worth debating because, again, like the logic that's being used in the chat right now is just bullshit logic. And it's it's the classic, like, oh, if you don't like pay-per-view, don't buy it. Like, oh, well, the system's not changing, so why are you still complaining about it? Really? Like, that's That's your excuse to defend the status quo, people? Really? Like, that's the same logic that's been used against, if you want to take it a much bigger topic, civil rights movement, gay rights movement, apartheid South Africa. Like, we can really go into like how flawed that logic is when it comes to suppressing progress. It's nothing's going to change. Why are you even trying? That's bullshit logic to be used in the chat right now, guys, and you guys know it. I'm not even going to mention your name right now. Not worth the time. Moving on.